This is Dr. Charles Parker, and you're listening to Core Brain Journal. It's a place where I connect both fresh discoveries and interesting different perspectives from advanced mind science with the realities of real people and everyday life down on Main Street. Well, welcome aboard, folks. Dr. Charles Parker at one more episode of Core Brain Journal, and we have a good buddy of mine. We've worked out at the gym at Waring's Gym down in beautiful downtown Virginia Beach for many years. And so Melvin Mathias is going to join us. Thank you so much for coming on board, Melvin.
You're welcome.
Melvin's going to talk to us. Melvin's been with the fire department, with FEMA. He is an expert on the contact trauma that a person can have while working as a first responder. This is all about first responder trauma. And Melvin's going to tell us a whole lot about all kinds of interesting experiences he's had and hopefully bring this up to those valued, great first responders who've done so much for us that really need to take a little bit better care of themselves in specific ways. So Melvin, if you would take a moment, you've been with the Virginia Beach, you've been a retired deputy fire chief. You retired from Virginia Task Force 2, the urban search and rescue team leader. You were a retired FEMA disaster safety officer and a Vietnam vet. You were involved with the Oklahoma City bombing, the September 11th terrorist attack, the attack on the Pentagon, the Haiti earthquake, Hurricane Katrina, and the 07 and 09 California wildfires, just to name a few. My friend, you've been around. So we're looking forward to talking to you. So tell us a little more about yourself, Melvin, what you're doing now, where you are, the whole, Virginia Beach situation, and what you're doing right now. Then we'll talk more about your history in a sec.
Okay, I am a consultant right now to mid-sized commercial construction as an OSHA safety compliant officer. Mm-hmm. And this is something that I've learned to do and something I wanted to do. And I learned it through my experiences in urban search and rescue. I was one of the developers of the safety program for the overhead teams.
Mm-hmm. And what's the overhead teams, Melvin? What?
An overhead team is a small group of individuals that manage all of the urban search and rescue assets, like teams from California, Arizona. Anytime there's a disaster where you have two or more teams working, then we oversee what they do and how they do it, and the method by which they're going to do it.
Now, is that a FEMA operation, Melvin?
Yes, that is.
So you're regularly with FEMA operations on a regular basis as a kind of a side job.
I used to be. I retired from that probably 2 years ago.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
So now I'm just a safety consultant to mid-sized commercial construction.
I got you. So, and let's talk a little bit about it, because the real purpose of this meeting and I was so enthusiastic in our casual conversations in the gym. Once in a while we're working out, and just so we don't have to work out, we engage in conversation over in the corner. Don't tell any of the guys at the gym what's going on. And I've always been interested in Melvin's history because he's been in a lot of places that have really been very significantly in the news as troublesome and traumatic for our country, for our nation. And he's been there with his eyes peeled and his ears peeled, and he's really been doing very specific first responder activities there. So, and he has an interesting story about what's happened. So let's start with the one that's kind of on the front end of your mind, where you said to yourself, hey, I've got to do this differently. I've got to really think about what's happening to me personally and what's happening to my teammates.
Yeah, I would say the first thing that most first responders do is they think that they're tough. Mm-hmm. They think they can handle it. Mm-hmm. They think they don't need to talk to anybody, that they're just macho. Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is, you cannot. And I'm proof of that. You have to have an outlet. You have to have someone that you can speak to. You have to have someone that that understands what you're going through. And at times, you might even need professional help or someone that has a professional knowledge that can point you in the right direction. But I would say most first responders think that they can handle it, and it comes out in ways that they do not expect. It can come out in violent behavior towards your family. It can come out in emotional stress. It can come out in not being able to sleep, eating disorders. It's a number of venues of which your trauma can act upon you. And if you don't recognize that you're going to need some help, or that you don't recognize that you're going to go through it, and there's a process everyone goes through when they see a traumatic event. And my point is I've been through it, and I know what to expect in some aspects, and I would like to help others to recognize that first they need help, or they may need help, and to know that there is a process that they're going to go through, as well as their families.
So what you're recommending, and what we're going to talk about tonight, is the process that a first responder does go through when they go through that traumatic incident, what actually happens to them in terms of their personal experience, their mind, their behavior, and how they repackage it when they're coming back.
That's correct.
Either repackage it or don't package it, whatever happens, and then what they can do about it. So we're going to hit the packaging, we're going to hit the preparation, the packaging, and what they can do about it. So let's start with, I think one of the most telling stories for me, Melvin, was the story you were telling me about coming back on the bus from the 9/11 disaster at the Pentagon, at the Virginia Beach Fire Department. You didn't go up there as a FEMA person. You were with the Virginia Beach Fire Department, who volunteered to go up there. Am I right about that?
Well, we were one of the urban search and rescue teams. The Virginia Beach Fire Department sponsors Virginia Task Force 2 Urban Search and Rescue.
Oh, I got you.
And so, and it's a multi-jurisdictional team, so it's not just Virginia Beach, it's Norfolk, Chesapeake, the area fire departments.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we take our expertise and we come together as a team that's sponsored by FEMA, and then when there's a major incident, FEMA actually dispatches us, and then to work as a unit under a command. So
how take us through that, because none of us have experienced. I certainly haven't. Take us through how that comes together. So they call you at your home and they say, meet. We're going to get on the bus and we're heading up to D.C.
Well, yeah. Well, the first thing that FEMA does is they will alert you. Okay, and as a team leader, I would get the alert. Say, hey, look, we're going to activate your team at a certain time. Okay, and at that time, what we do is we send out a page that goes out to all the members, and then we bring them in, and our members. Normally a team is like 280 some people. Well, only 86 people will go. So you have to determine what type of disaster it is, whether it's swift water rescue, whether it's an urban search and rescue, whether it's an earthquake, whether it's a tornado. And based upon those factors, you will pick the individuals that you think will meet your need. Okay. Once you've assembled the team, we all come together. Then we get our marching orders from the federal government, say that we want you to go by aircraft, or we want you to go by bus, or whichever mode that they choose they want you to go by. That's the way you're going to go.
Gotcha.
And then you get on the road, and then once you get there, the overhead team is usually there prior to you getting there, and then you'll get with them, and then they get with the local authorities to determine what needs to be done. And once you get your marching orders, and then you'll start putting together a plan, and we call it an incident action. Are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay. It's called an incident action plan. And then every operational period, whether it's a 24-hour period or whether it's a 12-hour period, we will develop a plan with set objectives to do what needs to be done. Whether it's rescue for the first part, whether it's a recovery for the second part, you'll go to those marching orders. And at a certain point, it'll go from rescue to recovery. And then when it goes to recovery, then you can slow down and take it a little bit more methodical. But during the rescue phase, it's all out.
So everybody's really booking on rescue.
Oh, yep.
Basically, people are dying in that situation.
That's correct. They're dying or have died. Mm-hmm. So what happens, and you may go for the first 24 hours, full on, everybody, 24 hours, no sleep, you are just hauling. And then the command will then start breaking it down into periods, whether they want a 12-hour period, a 6-hour period. It depends on the complexity of the incident. Mm-hmm. It's usually a 12-hour period. Every 12 hours you'll rotate. Mm-hmm. You'll go back, you'll eat, you'll sleep, you'll get up, you'll get your marching orders, you work, go back, you sleep, you eat. I mean, it's just, it's a grind. It's a real grind.
It's a grind. And then, so like, for example, with the Pentagon, how long were you up there?
We were there for 11 days.
Yep.
We got our marching orders. I think the bomb went off. I know I was in the clerk's office around 9 o'clock, and I got dispatched immediately for an overhead team. But my boss pulled me back and said, "No, you're taking the team." So by the time we got everybody in, we got the team assembled. We were on the road, I would say, by 5 o'clock that evening. Mm-hmm. We were told, and we didn't even know about the Pentagon. We were told to head towards New York, but to take the I-95 corridor. Mm-hmm. So when we got to D.C., it was around 8 o'clock that evening. We were told to go to Anacostia, that the Arlington Fire Department said they needed help. And that's when we first knew that we were going to go to the Pentagon instead of the New York.
So they were keeping it a secret, even from you guys, that the Pentagon was in trouble.
Yeah, we had no idea.
They were just not going to tell you because they didn't know what was happening themselves.
Right, and the really freaky thing about this, the whole thing, Charles, was when we left here, I had never been through the Hampton Roads Tunnel when there was no traffic on the road. Mm-hmm. It was an eerie feeling just getting started. And the whole way up there, we had a police escort, but it was surreal. It just wasn't. Everybody was off the road.
They closed the roads. I didn't remember that, Melvin.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they closed the roads or everybody went home.
Oh, okay.
I think what happened is we were under attack and nobody knew what was going on. So everybody went home to their families and we were going to wherever we were needed. And we thought we were going to New York. Mm-hmm. So we spent 11 days. We got there. The building was still on fire. The lean-to collapse had taken place. We bedded down. We got there that morning and went directly to work. And then we pulled the night shift. So we worked all day, and then we worked all night.
Now, you said something about the lean-to. What was that lean-to thing you referred to briefly?
When the plane went into the Pentagon,
yeah.
The whole structure, it went in, and the top part stayed up.
Oh, it did.
Oh, yes, and it stayed up for I don't know how many minutes, but after a while, it just collapsed.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
And I think every team that came in there, once we knew it was an attack, we said to ourselves that we were not going to let that building collapse any further after that lean-to collapse. That was one of our main objectives. Our other objectives was to search the building, do a primary search, to make sure that all the living had been removed.
Gotcha.
So that took about 2 days.
Mm-hmm. So did you take them out with stretchers? How did you actually get the individuals out? Did some of them walk out? What was going on in the site?
For us, the Arlington and Fairfax fire departments had removed all the living victims by the time we got there.
Mm-hmm.
So we were doing what we call the primary search to make sure that they had gotten them all.
Mm-hmm.
After that, then it became a process of removing the deceased.
I got you. Mm-hmm.
And it's just not removing the deceased. There are laws that come into play that have to be followed because it is a crime scene. You just cannot just go in there and remove them. The coroner has to be in. It depends on what state you're in, but the coroner has to be there. The pictures have to be taken. The forensics, all the forensics has to take place. So it's a very methodical way of removing the deceased. And a lot of times, it's like if you go out on archaeological dig, mm-hmm. where you move debris very carefully, mm-hmm. so that you can remove them. You got to understand though, when you move the debris, you're removing your support structure. Mm-hmm. So when a building collapses, the debris is helping to hold up that structure.
Gotcha.
So your structural engineers are all playing into this to help you so you don't bring a further collapse down upon the workers that are there. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of engineering goes into it. Mm. Golly, there's so much that goes into this type of rescue. You have to measure the building. I give an example. A very simple technique. We were in Oklahoma City. And the cracks in the building, we were secure in the building. The cracks in the building, we took duct tape and put on each side of the cracks with an arrow pointing. Okay. Mm-hmm. At one point in Oklahoma, the building shifted, and one of the guys looked up and went, "Holy crap!" Mm-hmm. The arrows were way off base.
Yeah.
Which told us that, hey, we had a big ship, we had to pull everybody out, we had to start from scratch again. Mm. So, yeah, and that plays into the trauma part of this stuff because all this is building upon your nerves. You're trying to do the best you can, but you're also worried about your safety as well. Mm-hmm.
So then what happened back to the situation, something occurred to me just as you were talking about this because I'm there with you in the debris of the Pentagon and had a brief snapshot in my mind of the Oklahoma bombing and federal building. But I'm also wondering about the people that you're working with. I mean, the issue is, number one, what kind of people are they? How did you select them in the first place? What are the criteria for being on your team in the first place? And how did you know who would work out best in that kind of a scenario?
Well, first of all, 80% of the team are made up of first responders. Mm-hmm. That then you have your medical component. Okay, we come fully capable with our own doctors, nurses, and medical people to take care of us. That's their first priority. Not take care of the victims, take care of us. They will take care of the victims if need be, but that's their priority. We also have to have engineers. We also have to have you have to have structural engineers, mm-hmm. people that can look at a building, They know where it's compromised, and they know what to do to make that building safe.
I got you.
And then we have to have equipment operators, and we pull those from the general public.
People just volunteer. They're like, I want to pitch in.
Yes, and we go out and recruit.
Uh-huh.
We go to a lot of the professional organizations that we need, and we'll present our pitch and see who's interested.
I got you. Okay. So then you're in there. This is the testing ground. That's why I asked the question, because this is where the vulnerabilities are going to reveal themselves to some degree. Now, they're all macho guys, as you were talking about in the beginning. But, of course, being on full alert and the whole issue of humanity, and you being an experienced guy there because you'd been to several tragedies before this one. So I'm trying to get into your head and think about what you're thinking about when you're watching everybody and seeing all this stuff go down. And thinking about what is Melvin thinking when he's watching these different people, move around in this tragic circumstance.
Well, as a team leader, your priority is number one, your team members. Number one. Your second priority is to try to meet the objectives that are laid out for each operational period. Okay, and sometimes those are pretty rigid. I mean, they might say that you're going to work in this quarter, you've got to shore up this part of the building, because there are other teams working in that building. And if you can't complete your task, or you do something that interrupts their task, or you could cause a collapse. There's a number of things that go on.
You could harm
so what's
them.
going on through my head is, first, number one is how are my folks doing?
Yeah.
And I'll give you a good example. When we were in Oklahoma City, about the 10th day, we've been going hard. It was about 3:00 in the morning, and I went to the overhead team and said, I'm pulling my team out. And he said, what? You're doing what? I said, I'm pulling my team out. They're spent. They're making little mistakes. They're tired. I said, there's going to be a major accident if I don't do something. And so the command, they allowed me to do it, allowed me to pull the team out. And then our next command and staff meeting, it was brought up. And the lead for the whole operation stood up and he said, something happened last night. And I told my assistant team leader, I said, here it comes, they're going to nail me. He said, we had a team leader last night come to us and pull his team off this pile. And he says, and I'm telling you, more of you guys need to do the same thing.
No,
I was really surprised they did that.
Yeah. Good for you.
But those are the things you have to do. You have to constantly assess what you're doing. You have to assess your capabilities. Sometimes you may get a task that your team might not be up to that capability. So you're going to have to hand it off.
You have to keep watching to see whether they are in fact losing it.
Right. Well, that's for sure. And there may be individuals on your team that you're going to have to
pull them.
Yes, and that actually happened. Another example, Haiti. We had a lady on our team had never been to a disaster. She had never seen the deceased. We got to Haiti, and as you well know, there were a lot of deceased in Haiti, and she actually went over the edge on us. And
now that sounds like a psychiatric term, Melvin. When you said over the edge, tell our listeners what happened that you had to deal with right there, so we can get the picture.
She just couldn't function anymore.
She freaked out. Is she crying?
Yes.
And
hysterically.
did she become anxious and crying?
She was anxious. She was crying. She was she had come to us and said, "Look, you got to get me out of here. I can't take this anymore. I didn't sign up for this." All the things that you're trained to listen for.
I got you.
So and we had to get her out of Haiti as quickly and swiftly as possible.
Completely out of the entire country.
Yes.
Because she was so overwhelmed, she couldn't go to the hotel or something.
No, well, there wasn't a hotel.
Right. Yeah, you had to be there, right? Ouch.
Yeah. But, yeah, and those are things you have to look for, because I don't care how macho you think you are. You know, you can have the machoest guy on your team, but there's going to be a point, someplace, somewhere, something is going to hit that breaking point. And they're going to need to have a respite, or they're going to have to you're going to have to get with them so they can understand what's going on. Because I tell you, the biggest guys fall the hardest. And when that happens, then you need to have the resources there to help them deal with that situation. And sometimes it's just getting them off to the side, saying you need a break. And other times you're just going to have to send them back.
So then, what are the signs that you have that you're going on in your head when you're watching people that are hints that things are starting to go to hell in a handbasket?
Well, the first thing I look for, anger issues. Okay, how quick is someone to get angry? You know, you're pushing their buttons. Okay. Then you have others that will isolate themselves. They'll pull off. They don't talk to anybody anymore. They're
withdrawing.
Yes, definitely. They start to withdraw. Their skill levels go down.
When you say that, what do you mean?
Well, a lot of times we have to operate with some very technical tools, and you'll see them making little mistakes that they never made before, either in setting up the tool or in the operation of the tool.
Give us an example on the tool then, Melvin, so we can get right there in that scene.
Okay. Jackhammers. You know, you're operating a jackhammer, and you'll notice that they're not putting it in the right place.
Oh, I got you.
Or they have trouble getting the tool started.
Yeah.
Just little things, just the little things.
They're futzing around with something they should know that they're familiar with, but they're starting to futz around, and you see that they have a certain level of incapacity in terms of their functioning.
That's correct.
Gotcha.
That's correct.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Those are things that start to clue you in that either someone's having a problem, or you might have a whole unit like that. Like the rescue team might all of a sudden start to withdraw. So then you got to find out what's going on. What has happened to bring them to this point.
So they have a group experience in their communication with each other. They wind up having an emotional reaction that is shared as a group. And then you got a whole series of problems going on, because you don't just have one person, you got a whole situation. Yeah, you have a whole unit. And as a team leader, those are things that you have to look for. I mean, and if you miss them, it can have devastating consequences. So, I mean, it's interesting. Plus, you got to have somebody that's looking out for you. So you have a colleague, a comrade that is watching you. That's kind of your whatever partner. Do you partner with each other, or how do you do that? Usually with a team. Now we're talking urban search and rescue now. Yep. With urban search and rescue, you have a team leader and an assistant team leader. And your assistant team leader has got to be somebody that you can trust to look out for your best interest. Because he's the guy that's going to keep you in check.
And he will notice it.
And he'll call you out if you need to be called out.
Yes.
He's strong enough in the relationship with you, and there's a mutual trust that you can call each other out.
Yeah, and that's correct. He may say, okay, come on. And some examples are, I know when I was at the Pentagon, we were having a situation with lodging for our folks, and the overhead team wasn't addressing it well enough, and I really went off on them. Mm-hmm. So my assistant team leader pulled me off to the side and said, "Hey, look, you got to back off some."
Yeah.
And so I went back and apologized later, but I just wasn't going to let my guys suffer because someone in the overhead team wasn't taking seriously the need for them to rest.
I got you. Yep. So I'm also thinking now, so then what you have is you've got a certain measure of structure. Let's talk about two things. There's one thing I want to talk about that very interesting thing you told me when we were at the gym one day about that trip back from the Pentagon. That's one thing I want you to tell me about. And then okay. I want you to tell me about the structure that you think your first responders, let's say we've got 100 or more first responders listening to this episode or trying to figure out how can I identify what I'm doing and really think about this further as I'm returning home. But first of all, tell the story about the bus going home so our listeners can get with you on that one, because that's a tough one.
First of all, it's still tough for me to talk about it, and I was mentioning it to my wife tonight, and it's still tough. Mm-hmm. We had spent 11 days in the Pentagon, shoring up the building, removing the deceased, doing what was needed. After 11 days, they rotated our team out, and they were sending us back home. So we all got on the buses, and as we left, first of all, we knew nothing about the news. You're so involved and engrossed with what we were doing. We did not see any news. We didn't even know it was an attack. Mm-hmm. We just knew that something had happened in New York. It was a big collapse. We had lost a lot of our fellow firefighters. I lost some very dear friends. So we got to the Pentagon. We went to work. And you get so focused that the rest of the world stops. Mm-hmm. And so after 11 days, then you come back to the world. You come back to reality. And we did not know about the patriotism that had taken place. So as we're riding back, and we had a convoy of 2 buses, and all the equipment that we took up there. So it was a pretty big convoy. But at every overpass that we went to, it's still hard to speak of, there was a fire trucks or police cars saluting us. Mm. Every single intersection we went through, there was a fire truck. Mm. It was so emotional. You're after such an event like that, all you want to do is just get away. You want to process it yourself. You've been through a lot of trauma, and you just want to get away. The problem is that the rest of the community, especially your home community, they want to put you on a pedestal. And it's the last thing you want. You just want to get away. And everybody...
Stop it. Let me stop you right there, Melvin. Okay. Why is that the last thing you want? Tell us, because that's important to get a little bit of a magnifying glass on that point.
It's because you put your pants on the same way that day that you did 20 days before the event ever took place. You see yourself as the same person as you've always been.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Everybody else now sees you as something greater than that. And you've got to have time to process it. I mean, you've been through so much, and now the community is going to put you on this pedestal. And they put you on that that pedestal because it's the only way that they can become a part of it. Mm-hmm. They need that as well. Mm-hmm. And as we go through this story, I'm going to tell you what I had to tell my folks, because the Oklahoma City experience taught me that the hardest part that you have to go through when you go through one of these is what's going to take place when you get home. Because now, all those things that you've seen and done when you're in a focused working mode, not consciously feeling the emotions, because you take your emotions and put them over to the side, now you're going to have to deal with them, because people want to know. They're going to say, well, what was it like? Tell me about it. When you start to do that, those emotions that you put over to the side are now going to start flooding in. Mm. And so if you don't have a process to deal with, and this is the big lesson for me, you've got to have a process that helps those people to deal with that part of what's coming. Because they've done the hard work, but the emotional hard work is coming, and that is the hardest part of the whole deal for most of us. Mm-hmm. If I'm making sense here.
Totally. I'm taken with the moment. I mean, it sounds terrible, but let's elaborate a little bit on why it's so hard. What's the burden for the first responder coming into that fresh home reality? What is the burden that a person feels?
I think the first burden is that you don't see yourself as a hero. Mm-hmm. Or anything special, if you know what I mean. Yeah. You don't feel special. You still feel like the same person you were the day you left. Mm-hmm. But for everybody else, you're something special.
It's a little bit like survivals. What's occurring to me, because we haven't been this close on the conversation before, but tell me what you think about this observation. It sounds like survivor's guilt a little bit, because you've been there with those bodies and those people that are slain, and you feel compassion for them and their families.
Yes.
And you don't want anybody patting you on the back because you're in a state of grief.
Yes, that's correct.
What happens is, because you're still dealing with the grief of the connections of those human beings and their families, and whatever they are, dismembered, whatever your visual is, and the trauma of that whole situation, and you're getting some accolades, and
right,
and you don't deserve it, you don't want to deserve it, you don't want any kind of praise, because you're in an identification with those people who've passed away.
That's correct.
You're at a lower level of thing. You're at a humble level of life and death, and they're putting you on this different level that you're really not comfortable being with, because it says something that you're different than those other people, and really what you were doing was really being intimate with those people who had passed away.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. And you really haven't had time to process what you've been through. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're so focused. I mean, you're laser focused on your job. You have to be, because you can't make a mistake. A simple mistake can have consequence that could collapse a whole building and just absolutely kill more people. Mm-hmm. So you're so laser focused. So as you come out of this, you're starting to process it. You know, what you've seen, what you've done, what you've heard, the smells, and the smells. So as you start to process this stuff, you have people coming up, slapping medals on you, mm-hmm. putting you on this pedestal. They want you to come talk. I gave so many speeches afterwards. Mm-hmm. the mayor, the council. Everybody wants to give you an accolade for what you did because, in a sense, you're doing something they cannot do.
And you're doing something for the community, and they want to
Right.
show their appreciation. So it's
Yep.
perfectly natural in the service that you're providing. That is what a first responder is person. They are in the service of the community. And the
Yes,
community
and-
wants to thank you, but you're in no mood to be thanked because you don't want to be special in the first place.
That's correct.
So then
And
how did you
I would
handle
say-
that with those guys in the bus? I mean, if you had the experience in Oklahoma and you had an awareness about that in Oklahoma, did you
So-
do
so what-
something different on the bus ride home with the guys?
Yes, I did. Just before we were to pull in to our training center where we were to meet the family, meet the press, meet the citizens, because they all come out to greet you and do what they're going to do. I stopped the bus. I said, stop the bus. I got off and I got everybody together and I said, look, you're about to go through the hardest thing of this whole deployment. And they sort of look at you like you're sort of crazy. What are you talking about? It's just
Melvin is crazy.
yeah. I said, look, I've been there. I've done it. I said, you've now got to stand up in front of the community and accept the praises that they're going to leap upon you. And you don't want them. Or you just, right now, I said, I would say everybody in here just wants to go home and get away from it and just relax. But it ain't going to happen. Mm-hmm. This is a part of being a member of one of these teams. You have to understand that you do what you do. It may be heroic. It's very hard. A lot of people can't do it. But on the flip side of this, you have to be able to accept the fact that these people, your community, your loved ones, are going to want to know what you went through. They're going to ask you questions. They're going to pat you on the back. They're going to invite you to dinners. Everything. And they're going to ask you these questions, but you have to understand that it's a part of what and who this whole process is. So we stopped and we went through that so that I did it so they would understand and recognize the fact that this was coming, and it's hard.
Now, let me ask you another question that's coming to mind. Excuse me for interrupting you for a second, but did you tell them, I'm trying to put myself in your place and with the guys that you have there. Did you tell them, look, it's better for you not to talk about this stuff? It's better for you to just keep it inside? Or do you tell them, hey, get it off your chest, talk about whatever you want to talk about?
One of the things we learned from Oklahoma is that when the teams get back, we bring them into a very secure area, and then we do what we call a decompression, and in which we go through, and we have professionals there that help us decompress. Now,
what is decompression? What is that?
A decompress is sort of like a you often hear this. It's not a debrief, it's a decompress. You debrief probably anywhere 10 to 30 days afterwards. Mm-hmm. A decompress is just to let the air out, just to know, hey, you've been through, and we talk about it, you guys have been through a very traumatic situation, mm-hmm. Okay? You're exhausted, you're tired, and then we go through the various things that they need to watch out for. Number one, anger issues, alcohol issues, drug issues. We go through all of those things so that they can know that, hey, if this starts to happen, you need to get professional help. And for some in there, it is going to happen. So we go through that scenario before we let them out to go meet the family and the press and the community.
Now, so that's what the families as well, Melvin. Do you let the families know?
We let the families know prior to us getting there.
Mm-hmm.
We let and they have a support system, and they have a phone number that they can call to get professional help.
Gotcha.
So
then what happens when they come back? So then the debrief is it's a structured, kind of strategic rekindling in terms of processing it from a cognitive point of view. The decompress is processing it from an affective, emotional.
That's correct.
Self-management from an emotional point of view.
That's correct.
Gotcha.
Right. And I'm not sure all the teams do this.
Mm-hmm.
This was something that after Oklahoma that we recognized, because we missed this when we came back from Oklahoma.
What happened when you missed it?
Well, we had one guy that he almost committed suicide.
Mm.
And the sad part about it is it was one of our civilians.
Mm-hmm.
We just weren't prepared for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden we're going, crap, we missed it.
Yeah. Ouch. Well, so I'm looking at our time. This is a very evocative moment in detail. To live through this with you. Thank you so much for sharing it. I'm looking at the time, Melvin, so we do have to wind it up. Let's think about some closing remarks that you, as a thought leader, you're a thought leader with this. You're a senior player who's been in myriad serious problems. What would you say would be the biggest structural grid that you could put on this process that you would recommend for others that others need to do as a means of preparation for whatever next tragedy is?
Well, the first thing I would say is to recognize that there are processes that go beyond just the incident itself.
Yeah.
There is the preparation, there is the actual event, and then there's the aftermath.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I learned in Vietnam, and I saw this very clear in Vietnam, there were people that could not function in the pre, but function very well during and after. Mm-hmm. There were those that could not function during the moment, but could function on either side, and then vice versa. There's those that fell apart in the aftermath. Mm-hmm. You have to recognize that you're going to have people that function here that do not function in one of the other areas that you're going to have to go through.
So there are three different realities is what you're saying.
Yes.
Each one has a different structure to it. The pre, the action itself, and the post, they all have different realities, and you have to have like a mental set for each one of the realities.
And each of us, by human nature alone, will function better in one of those. Mm-hmm. There's those that do very well in the pre, they're in the training aspect and all that other stuff, but they cannot function in the during and do very well in the aftermath, and vice versa all around. Mm-hmm. You have to recognize that. And you have to recognize, and you have to have a support system in each of those.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And I think what society has failed to recognize is that the aftermath is that these folks that don't function well in the aftermath, the heroes that can do the heroic work, and then you take them out of that environment and they just fall. They cannot function in society any longer. Mm-hmm. They think because you can operate in this one venue that you can operate in all three, and you cannot. If that makes sense.
Absolutely makes sense. I think it's this is a remarkable, serious punctuation right here of this whole conversation, because you're really telling us, hey guys, there are different realities. And if you're going to go into this and you're going to adequately prepare, you've got to get your mindset for each one of them.
Yes, you do.
Differences that occur with each one of them, and don't have a false sense of confidence just because you did the prep okay. Don't have a false sense of confidence because you did the event okay. You got to get all three organized, or you can go right to hell in a handbasket with the whole thing.
Yes.
That's a very, very good. I really thank you so much for sharing that with our audience, and thanks so much, Melvin. We do have to wind up, but listen, if you at the gym, I'm going to run into you at the gym. Okay. You're going to say, "Hey, Chuck, I forgot to tell you this right here. This is a whole nother thing," and we will definitely have you back because this is very, very helpful. It's very thoughtful for you to be able to get down and share this again. Because I know it's difficult going through because you're going through pieces of it again, and we just appreciate it. We can identify with the difficulties you've had, and the progress that you're trying to make by sharing this with everybody.
What helps me as well, believe it or not, one of the things that I found, Doc, is that, golly, there are events or smells that will pop up someplace. It could happen in the gym. It can happen watching a movie that will bring this all back. And how you deal with it. And you just have to have a support system. I think recognizing what you're going to go through, the process, and to know that you can get help with any of this process is the most important thing that we can carry forward with this.
Well, that's a very good point. We're going to post this on our veterans page because the same thing happens with veterans, and we've got a lot of material about traumatic brain injury, PTSD, PTS. Some people call it just post-traumatic. Some people call it combat stress. We've got a whole page of all these, and this is going to be a very important addition to that piece. And I just want to thank you. It's going to be the first responder piece, and just want to thank you, Melvin, for taking the time to join us here.
Oh, certainly. And I'll see you in the morning.
Yes, sir. All right, buddy. You have a good one. See you around the cabin.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to Core Brain Journal. We're working every day behind the scenes to bring you reports that connect research benches with those street trenches. Here we share the complexity of mind science because, as you know, details really do matter. One of the most pervasive, misunderstood challenges is how commonplace medications, like those written for ADHD, are used so regularly without clear guidelines. If you think you'd like more specifics, take a minute to download my 2-page PDF packed with video links and references on the absolute essentials of how to start ADHD medications. They're easily available at corebrainjournal.com/start. Thanks for listening. Do connect and stay tuned. Together we can make a difference.